Good morning. Today we're going to be making the Sandhill sling. I have the pattern here and it's got all the instructions, and one of the first things you need to do, in addition to following the instructions in terms of how much of the supplies you need, you also need to make a copy of 2 pages. There's the one that has the, whoops, doesn't show well because there's one behind it, has the patterns. You need to make a copy of that and make sure that your test box measures at 1 inch square or at 4 centimeters square, or else your pattern pieces won't be the right side. The other thing you're allowed to do is to make a copy of this page, because making the labels is really important. They tell you what all the pieces need to be cut to be, and when you cut them, pin them on, and you'll be all set. You'll know what you've got and what's where, so that when it comes time to assembling, you don't say, let me measure this and figure out what it is. And so I will, let's talk about our fabric here. We have chosen this for our exterior fabric, which will be very pretty. And this will be our lining fabric, which goes very well. And we have lovely pink zippers that coordinate. We have our hardware, and we have our D-rings, which are a smaller size than our strap. And we have both interfacing and fleece to make it a sturdier bag. And we have 2 different threads, one to match the outside, one to match the lining. So that works well for everything. So I will now move over to where I'm going to be doing some cutting and show you how I go about doing that. So one change that I have made is that because we have this pretty beautiful flower in the center, I have decided that I want my pocket to focus, because it's a zip pocket. Let me show the cover of the picture again. And you can see this zipper pocket here. So I've decided that I want that flower to be right there. So I took some Swedish tracing paper and cut that piece out, which is the front pocket, which is 8 by 6. Sorry, no, zipper bottom pocket, which is 9.5 tall by 8 inches wide. And so I'm going to spend a little time fiddling with that, getting the flowers the way I like them to look. Then I have the zipper flap, which this is this piece, and what happens is it gets folded in half and covers the zipper, and so it'll be there. So having it be blue to me works with the pattern. And then this piece I'll cut out above that, and again it will fit with the pattern of the fabric. So I've just sort of stacked them up one on top of the other, and that's how I'm going to cut them out. And then I cut another one, and I decided that I might as well make the back center the flowers on the back, and that puts that at about there, and then that will be centered on the back. I have all my little bits and pieces here. I have to cut them out. One way to do this, if you don't have a pattern that you're trying to center, it's really easy. If you cut out your pieces, since the lining pieces and the outside are the same, you can cut out the lining pieces and then use them as pattern pieces for the outside. And again, if your lining and your pattern is not a, if your pattern is not a large something that you want to focus on, if it's an overall pattern, you can cut double. I have decided to cut single layer just because we've got these gorgeous flowers, and I'm trying to pull them out. This is the shoulder connector piece. I haven't cut that out of the Swedish tracing paper because I don't think it matters as much if it's positioned on the flowers or not. To me, that's less important. I will go through all of these and cut them out. And the other thing is, if you open your pattern up here, we're going to make a fabric strap. So I'm going to need a piece of fabric that's 6 inches by 42 approximately to make the strap. And I'm also going to use fusible fleece inside the strap. I may use interfacing as well as the fleece. I haven't decided that part yet. But I want the strap to have some body. So if you have, you can also use a webbing. You can make one out of cork if you wanted. I decided this bag, we have this pretty canvas, and I was going to use that. And each of your little labels tells you, it will say that, okay, the main panel, you need 2 of your exterior fabric, you need 2 of your lining fabric, and you need 2 of fusible woven interfacing. And I'm adding 2 of fusible fleece to give it a little bit more body. I will use the interfacing on the lining and the fleece on the exterior. So all the lining pieces, I will cut a piece of the lining fabric as stated, as well as interfacing. So there's an interior pocket, there's the zipper pocket bottom. I'm doing the view with the zipper. The top gusset piece. That one I will probably not worry as much about where the flowers fall. I may cut it so it splits in the middle, and then the zipper will go right between the flowers. And then I showed you the zipper cover and the zipper pocket bottom and the zipper top. And then the bottom gusset, again, I'm not too worried about how the flowers fall on that. But I will make sure that the back piece is the flowers are centered, and the front I probably won't worry as much because that will be inside the pocket. And yes, when you open the pocket, you'll see it, but I don't think it'll matter as much. So that's what I'm going to do for cutting, and I will get things started, and then I'll take some pictures as I go along. Okay, we've got all our stuff organized. Here's our pattern. She talks a little bit about what I said about you cut your lining fabrics, and then one or the other, you can use them as pattern pieces. She has different cutting layouts presented here to help you in terms of figuring out what to put where. I always like to lie things out. Sometimes I go through with a chalk marker or a friction pen to make sure I have enough room for everything, because there's nothing worse than starting to cut and realizing, oh, I got a big piece, I forgot to put it down, and then having to go buy more fabric. So and she has just fusible woven interfacing. I use the fusible woven interfacing mostly for the lining, and then I use fleece for the exterior. I think it will give the bag more body. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is, remember I showed you in the instructions, if you're going to make a fabric strap, we cut the 6-inch strip, and I measured it to, it's 42 or 43 inches. And then I decided to use the interfacing and the fleece. And what I did was that it's a 6-inch strip, and I interfaced the entire width, and then I did the fleece down the middle. And then what you do is you're pressing up a 1/2 inch. I did not do interface and fleece to the very end. Those parts are clear to make it a little bit less bulky. So you're folding up a 1/2 inch. First you fold it in half and press it this way, and then you bring the sides to the middle and press it this way, and tuck that back in the way it was. And then I'm going to seam down both long edges, and then I will have our strap. And I'm going to do this in the blue. I don't want it to jump out and say, look at me, I'm top stitching. If anybody wants to look, they'll see it, but I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, because I am doing top stitching, I am going to adjust my stitch length. I want it to be a little bit longer than normal. I'm just going to set it at a 3. And then I've got to fiddle with this edge so that it looks nice again, because after I opened it out, it's not as nice and crisp as it had been. And she just says to top stitch close to both edges. This is the end that's going to be caught. You're going to use to hold your strap hardware. So, and I'm going to start just a little bit in, and I'm going to go backwards to begin with. And I'll do a tie off. So I'm going back for 2 stitches, and then I'm going to go forward, and I'm just top stitching about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, catching both the top and the bottom. And you can see I'm just letting the machine pull the fabric through. I'm not pulling, I'm smoothing it. I'm not pulling it back through. Sometimes people grab it and want to pull. I'm letting the machine do that work. My hands in front, just keep it smooth and guide it. I'm going to tie off at the end, cut my stitches. And we're not worrying about finishing this end because this end gets enclosed in a seam. This one down here. And then I'm just going to repeat the same thing down the other side. And my strap is nicely top stitched along the edges. I'll just trim the threads. Oops. So now we are on to construction. We have already made our strap, and so now we are going to do our strap holder and make our strap connector, and so I will get organized for that. So as you can see, everything is cut out, all my tags are on. I have put, for some pieces, like for the pocket, this is the interior pocket, I interfaced one side. This is the zipper pocket top. This is the piece of Swedish tracing paper I used for positioning. That one I put fleece on the back, and I didn't run it right to the edges. I'm trying to make it the sides a little bit less bulk in the side seams. The zipper pocket bottom, the lining is fully interfaced. The outside, again, I set the fleece back a little bit all around. The strap holder, that's the first step in the pattern. That one I cut the two pieces as she directs. First you put the interfacing just down the center, then you fold it in half and then fold it and press it. And this is our it's going to be holding a D-ring, and it will be like that. The next step is going to be to do the top stitching on that, as she says in the pattern. I'm not telling you anything that's not there, but because I opted to add fleece to the outside, the zipper cover I did not put fleece on. I think just interfacing is fine for that. The top gusset, on the outside pieces I put the fleece. On the inside pieces I put the interfacing on the lining. And this is the bottom gusset. Again, the outside has fleece, and I did not run the fleece all the way to the very end, so that at the edge where we're fitting the zipper and together there's a little bit less bulk, and the same on the lining. And this is our counter rounding template, which we will use near the end, so I don't want to lose that. The shoulder connector, again, this one I decided I would put the interfacing on one piece and the fleece on the other. And I, again, wanted to decrease the bulk, so I trimmed it all back scant half an inch, so that the interfacing and the fleece should be right up to the seam allowance, but not necessarily included in it. And this is my main panel. And I have interfaced the lining, and I have put fleece on the outside, and I did not trim the fleece back on those because I want to be sure it goes right in, is included in the seam. I took the bulk out from the side gussets, the bottom and the top side gussets. And then here is my hardware, and since the first couple things we're going to do in the pattern have to do with the hardware, we need a D-ring, and we need our both our buckle and our slider. So I'm going to pull them out and get organized. Okay, so we're working on our strap holder. Here's my little placeholder. And I'm going to save these because I like to keep them with the pattern. If I am going to do it again in the future, then I have them already there. I don't have to, but you can always just reprint another page. That's why I do like to keep the pattern in its entirety, then I can make copies. So she suggests top stitching this edge, that edge, and then whatever you want. We'll put one more down the middle, I think. And here, yes, you can backstitch. Because it's going to be enclosed in a seam, it's less important, but it doesn't hurt to. And again, I'm just doing it about 1/8 of an inch, which is the first little line on your presser foot. Oops. And that one's not going to tie off on the fabric because I pushed the button too late. And then in terms of going down the center, I'm just going to eyeball it, and I'm about centered between there, and I will just do my best to stay right about at that point. And go all the way down to the other side. Okay, and we're still set at a 3, which is a top stitching, which is fine. The next thing is basically, it's the equivalent to basting. We're hitching the 2 ends of our strap. This is our D-ring, and it'll hold the strap, so we're just going to stitch along the bottom here. And what I'm going to do is start in the middle, and I'm going to go back to one side, and over to the other side, and then back, stop in the middle. Okay, there's that piece. Now the next thing we're going to do is, again, we're following our instructions. It's step 2, and we're going to make our shoulder strap. So we want to hitch, if you have a right side or a wrong side of your strap, this is the time to claim it. I don't, but we're going to take our finished end, and we're going to go up and through. Oops, actually we do have a right and a wrong side of our bracket though, because see where the seam is, we want to make sure that that's the side that, so, and then she says to have a 2 inches there. Let's see how I did. A little shy. So from there, first I was shy, then too much. Okay, so we have a 2-inch overlap here, and this is our adjustable slider. So all we're going to do is we're going to stitch along the edge there. And this is, again, one of those places where frequently it works better if you start a little bit in and you go backwards first. And I'm going to do a tie off. Now I'm going to go forward all the way to the other end. And I'm being very careful that I want to stitch right over where I was before, so that it is just one row of stitching. And sometimes it takes a little bit of practice to do that when you're going backwards and forwards. But because I chose thread that's the same color, it also blends that way. But if you look, there's really just one line of stitching showing. And once I clip the threads from where I tied off, it's pretty good. So again, she has pictures in her book, her booklet, of how we're going to thread this. So we're going to take our strap, we're going to go through our long end, and then, not this way, through this side, and then back through that side. And this is where it's going to be a little bit tight because I chose to do the fleece and but that way it's a sturdier strap. And I'm not going to want it that short, I don't think. So there, our strap is made. I don't know if you can. So we've got our hook at the end, we've got our slider here, And this is the raw edge that's going to be encased as we go along. So we've already done 2 steps of our pattern. Now we're going to make it, let me find my piece, we're going to attach it to the part that attaches to the bag. So the next step, we're on to step 3. So if you like to follow along, it's not a bad thing. And what you want to do is you're going to center your strap. I guess she suggests you do this on one piece first and then do the whole thing, which is probably a wise plan. So we will go across here. And the first time I'm just going to hold the strap in place. I'm going to do it just on the edge of the presser foot. And I'm going to go forward, not backwards. Okay, and now, because I'm starting in construction, I'm going to go back to doing my stitching at 2.5 millimeters. And so now I'm going to line these all up and be very careful to make sure you don't let this swing to the side, because you don't want to catch your strap in your construction. So I'm going to go up one side, across the top, and back down the other side. And our seam allowance here is 1/2 inch, so I'm going to be stitching it 1/2 inch. And then I'm just going to pull this out this way, and I will take it and press it and come back, and she says to top stitch along this side, across here, and down that side. So you don't have to worry about finishing your seams because you're going to be top stitch. Okay, and now we're just going to top stitch again 1/8 inch from the edge, and my needle down is still set up, so that's how I want it. And I'm going to lengthen the stitch. It won't matter much that I didn't for the first little bit, but I do like it a little bit longer. Okay. And right across the top. Okay, so there we have my whole strap system is done. The strap holder is done, and because I don't like to lose things, I'm actually just going to hitch those together for now because I don't need them at the moment. I will be needing them before long. So, and then I have finished step 2. So now we're on to step 3, which is going to be zippers. So the zipper comes, I bought two of handbag zippers, which come with a double pull. And for the pocket itself, for the zipper pocket, we don't need 2 pulls. We just need 1. We need an 18 inch and a 10 inch. And I have enough extra that I am going to cut probably closer to 12 inches off, and I'll leave 1 zipper pull will stay on the thing, and the other one will be on the piece I cut off. The reason why it's nice to leave your zipper long, because then you can do all your stitching with your zipper pull off to the side and the metal tail at the end off to the side, and that way you don't have to worry about bumps around the zipper pull. If you have extra zipper, it makes it easier for you. So since she calls for a 10 inch, I'm going to cut a 12 inch, and that gives me stuff to hang off both sides. So Okay, this is the part where you've got this zipper pull here. You've cut your zipper. You have to be really careful. You do not want to just zip it off the end, because then you'll have your pull here in the air and your zipper won't have a zipper pull on it. If you have a safety pin handy and you want to put it at the end, if you're good at remembering, that's fine. It can be fixed. It's not insurmountable. It's just an additional chore that you'd rather avoid, I would think. So once you've cut your zipper, don't go zipping it at all until you're sure that it's secured. If you want, you can do a little zigzag on either end. It's going to happen as part of, or at that end. Once you get your zipper in place, you're going to do that. But if you have difficulty holding back from running that zipper all the way to the end, then just zigzag across, hold the ends together and just do a zigzag across there. It's not a big deal if you're not going to be able to leave that zipper pull alone. So we've got our zipper panel here. This is the zipper pocket. Again, I cut this out. I think I like it better this way, so that's how I'm going to have it. This is the top, this is the bottom. So we're going to lay our zipper across. We're going to, again, be very careful. We want our zipper near the end but not off. And we'd like to have the zipper pull end hanging off the fabric. So we've got our zipper, right side of our zipper to our right side of our pocket. Pocket is going, top is up. And we're just going to stitch along the top. She says baste. It's just baste that you want to do. In this case, basting is stitching close to the edge. And I'm at a 3.0 stitch, and I'm going to leave it there. And I'm just going to stitch across, again, about 1/8 of an inch from the edge, holding the zipper onto the fabric so that it's held in place. So we have our zipper, it's right side up, and it's going there. And then the next step is going to be that we're going to take the lining. And I chose to have the lining, the dots go up and down on my bag. If you wanted, you could do them this way, but I did them this way. So we're going to lie, the lining goes to the wrong side of the zipper, but we have the right sides of the fabric together and the zipper is sandwiched in between. And then we'll be ready to stitch here. Okay, she says to put your zipper on with a zipper foot, which we often do. And she says to stitch 3/8 of an inch from the edge. And so I'm just showing you that I have swung my needle and I am lining my fabric up so that basically the foot's running almost along the zipper and the needle's going in 3/8 of an inch from the fabric edge. And I'll do a little tie off at the beginning. And then I will stitch all the way across. And then we have our pocket made. We have an inside, we have an outside. I'm going to go over and press it away, and then we will top stitch down along here. So I'm going to top stitch along here. And I just did a couple back stitches. And again, I'm doing about 1/8 of an inch. So there I have my pocket. It's all neatly top stitched across the top. Oops, and I could have changed the thread in the back, which I didn't think about. So it has a nice blue, but that's the inside of the pocket, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. But if you think about it, it's a good place to change your thread to match the inside lining color. So the next step is to put the zipper cover on, and that we just line it up with the edge of the zipper, and it's matching the pocket. And let's see, I think we can do it this way. We're just going to edge stitch it. No, we'll do it this way. This one we're going to do with the regular foot, not the zipper foot, because it doesn't need the zipper foot, because we're just catching it on the edge. And if you choose not to use the zipper cover, you don't have to do this step. I mean, that is an option. You don't, oops, hang on. Because I adjusted my needle, I need to put it back so it's where I think it is. Okay, put you up, because I want to be stitching at 1/4 of an inch. Except that. Okay. There, it decided to do it. It was not in the right mood. And I'm just lining up the raw edges of the zipper cover with the zipper tape. So that is done. It is attached. It's covering my zipper nicely. And I'm not going to test my zipper by doing a great big wide thing. I will at some point make sure that I put my zipper where it belongs. But the next step we're going to do is put the zipper top on. And let's see if I can find my zipper pocket top. And again, I did the zipper top. I did fleece it so that it feels comparable to the bottom. But once it's on, let's see, trying to remember which way I had this going. I think it was this way. Which way do I like it better? That's the whole question. I think maybe that way. No, it must have been this way. So this is going to be, again, centered along there. We're going to stitch it, and I'm not sure, I think we'll need the zipper foot again. So I am again going to stitch across, hitching the zipper top, 3/8 of an inch seam between the zipper tape. I've got the zipper top going from side to side on the zipper bottom, and I'll do a tie off here, and then I will go all the way across. And she says not to worry about, I'm going to go press this, but we're not going to top stitch this yet because that happens in a later point. But the one thing we do want to do at this point after we press that up is we're going to put our zipper pull into the middle here, and we're going to zigzag both edges to close our zipper. And we're also going to measure to make sure that this whole length, once this has been pressed, is 12 inches, and we're going to trim it if it's not, if it's slightly over 12. We want it to match the size of our top of our purse precisely. It should not be bigger. So I will go do that, and I will be back. Okay, so now we're going to stitch along the edge, fairly close to the edge, and I'm lengthening the stitch to a 3.0, and we just want to go all the way around, about 1/8 of an inch, holding all those pieces together. And I will remove pins as I get to them, because I don't ever sew over pins. Okay, and this is where now we are going to top stitch along here, along this zipper. So I think I can do this. I'll just move the zipper pull as we go along. Again, I want to do it about 1/8 of an inch. Now slide the zipper pull beyond so it's not in the way. And there we have our front and our pocket, and the inside of our pocket with both the flowers showing through and the pink. And as I said, had I thought about it, I would have changed that for the pink thread. I'm not going to rip it out and unstitch and redo. It doesn't bother me enough. It's not something that anybody should ever be fretting about, but I could have thought about it and done it differently. So next up is the interior pocket, and as I said, I interfaced one piece but not the other to give it some body, but not to make it super stiff. And she has you sew 1/2 inch across the top. I mean, that's your normal. Sew them together across the top, and then we're going to make a casing for a zipper. And since the seam allowance is 1/2 inch, we're going to sew it 1/2 inch. And I am going to change the thread here because this is blue. And I'm going to do it before I forget to do it. Okay, let's start again. I'm going to sew 1/2 inch from the edge, top of the pocket, and I've got my stitch for a seam, not for top stitching, and I'm going to back stitch and away I go, or tie off actually. So this is the inner pocket. We're going to press it and create a casing. So I'll be right back shortly. Okay, we're all pressed. I have my piece of elastic. We're going to make our casing. So we're going to sew 1/2 inch from the edge, and we're going to do tie off at the start. And if you have a bodkin, that's a really wonderful way to thread elastic, but I haven't found mine yet. Packing and moving and not being organized. It'll appear. As soon as I buy it, I'll find that I had 3 of them already, but that's why I haven't purchased a new one. But you just put the elastic on the safety pin and poke it through. And this is an optional step. You might not want to have elastic in your pocket. And I'm wondering whether putting the interfacing in is going to make this pocket so stiff that it's not going to be happy to have elastic in it. And when you're threading elastic, again, always be careful because you don't want to pull the end through. And I'm just going to position a pin in the end to hold that one there, and then take it out the other end, and I can take my safety pin out. And snug that. Yeah. Yeah, I think I have a little bit of elastic. I'm not sure I'm going to like the elastic. I guess it will keep the pocket held a little bit. My jury is still out on that. But the next step after we have that is we want to attach it to one of the panels of the lining. So the way this bag works is you're making an outside and you're making an inside, and then you hitch them together at the very last step. So I have my pocket will go here, and let's match the corners. Over here, match those corners. And then up to here. And there we are. So we'll stop there for a minute, and then I'll So I have the pocket will be a little bit elastic there. It'll hold it on its own a bit. So now we're going to take that little corner piece the corner rounding template. And if you have a ruler, there are some quilting rulers, the corners, which are really wonderful for something like this. But without a ruler, this works too. You can use a rotary cutter and just very carefully try not to cut your template too much. Or I'm just tracing it, and I will do that's on that one. I'll do it on all 4 pieces, and I have to do the upper edges too. So you probably don't need to see me do all this. So I will come back when I have all the templates drawn and I've trimmed them all, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, next up is we're going to be doing the top gusset. Now, I very carefully cut my pieces so that they're fit together now with the flowers matching. So what will happen is there'll be a slight gap when that's folded down, and for the zipper, they won't, but the zipper is going to be in the middle. So we're going to start with right sides together, the right side of our zipper facing the right side of whichever piece you want. And I want the zipper hanging off the side so it's out of the way. And I'm going to seam this on along here, and then I will turn that away and then I will put the other piece down, right sides down there, and turn that away. We're not going to top stitch yet though. That's something that happens later. So we're going to stitch it on, and let's see, with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. That's what I thought. So I think, again, I think I'm going to use the zipper foot, makes it a little bit easier. And there's my 3/8. My zipper pulls are out of the way. So there's my one, and it's stitched on. And so since I took the care to cut out 2 halves, let's make sure I've got these lined up. Yes, that was the one that went there. So I'm going to take this one, I'm going to line the sides up, and again I'm going to sew it 3/8 of an inch. So then I have my 2 pieces, and I'm going to press this. And after I press, I'm going to measure to make sure that this whole gusset is 4 inches wide. And if it's not, once I've pressed it well, I'm going to center the zipper and trim each side so it'll be 2 inches from the center of the zipper in both ways. And again, this is something that happens due to the positioning, the width of the zipper, and everybody's stitch sometimes being a little bit different, but this, by having this be 4 inches, it will match the bottom gusset precisely. So I will be back. So I was lucky, 4 inches from here to here. My zipper must have been the right size. Not a big deal either way. The big thing is that the next step. Now, when we were doing our construction, it's much easier to have the zippers pulled out of the way. You don't have to worry about them. However, at this point, it is very important to bring the zipper back into the main part of the pieces, because if you leave the zipper out there, you'll have no zipper when you finish your construction. So we want them in there, and we're going to take the bottom gusset and we're going to line them up, and we're going to stitch a 1/2 inch across there. And if you're concerned, you can zigzag at the edge of the zipper to make sure that you don't accidentally slide it off. It's a good thing to do now, but in the next couple steps we're going to be sewing that zipper tape, so it's less of an issue, and if you've got your zippers in the center, you'll be okay. So I am going to stitch a 1/2 inch from the edge. Oops, I'm going to take off my zipper foot because I do not need that now. So I'm sewing my upper gusset, my top gusset, to the lower at a 1/2 inch seam. raw edges even, and away I go. And I tend to go back over the zipper carefully again. I want to stitch right on the same stitches. And I just realized that I didn't sew it at 1/2 inch, I sewed it at 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to do some unstitching. Back in a moment. Try again, stitching, and I'll pay attention to where the seam allowance is. And away we go. And nice, I'm still at 1/2 inch. So I got my seam allowance right, but I didn't back stitch over the zipper. But I believe we're going to do some top stitching. Yes, so it'll be okay because it will be stitched twice. Now on this end, see, look at that. They don't line up. Well, that's because the bag goes around the whole thing. So we are going to, again, there's a big lump here, but that's okay. We've made sure our zipper pulls are in the center, so we're not going to be affecting them. And we're going to, let's go from this side this time. Sorry if I bumped that. I don't mean to make you seasick. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is to top stitch on the bottom gusset, not the top gusset. So I think I'm just going to finger press. I think I can do that adequately. I'm going to lengthen my stitch to 3, and I'm going to top stitch across the bottom. So I have held that seam down there, and now I can use, I didn't say earlier, never cut your zipper, excess zipper, with your good scissors. Always use some old scissors or household kitchen scissors, something, but never your good scissors. Never, ever, ever. So now I'll top stitch the other side, and then I'll be back. Okay, oops, we don't need the label on anymore. We're going to do a similar thing for the bottom gusset of the lining. First, you take each of the 2 halves of the upper lining, and we're going to press back 1/2 inch all along, because that's how we're going to attach it, the inside to the outside, is along the zipper. And we're going to put them right sides together, and they're not going to line up, so we're going to line up the outside edges. Let's see here. We're going to line up the outside edges so that we can stitch across there on this side, and then we're going to go do the same on this side. We'll drag them over and again match the outside corners and stitch across. So let me get started stitching. Oops. And again, it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And we're going to stitch right across, so I got both my pieces there. Okay, and now our whole gusset is assembled for the inside. Ta-da! Now we're ready to start talking about putting the whole thing together. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to center our strap, making sure that you've got it the way that it's supposed to be, so that as the strap is lined, this is the back piece. The strap should be right side up when it's lying against the back, because that way when you look at the front, you'll have the slider facing the correct direction. So that's important, and if you look at her picture, it's pretty obvious how to do it. So I'll put a pin there and a pin here, and then I will measure just to make sure. So from there to the side seam is 4 1/8, and it's less here, so basically I'm not in the center. So let's try again. That's at 4 inches there, and that's at 4 inches. I'm measuring from here to there. So I wasn't off by much, but I was off. So there is that piece held in. And then down on the lower back, we have to take, and I hitch this onto the strap. So this has to be put in, and it is going to be 1 1/4 in from the edge. So let's set this at 1 1/4, and I can run the 1 1/4 there, and then this goes down there, and this will go here. And this is where, if I knew where my binding clips were, or my magic clips, they would be great. But since I don't, I am just going to hold it and quickly stitch it along the lower edge where I basted it before, and I will change my thread right after I attach this. Because this construction should be done in the blue. And I'll trim my threads. But now that I'm working on the outside of the bag, I need to go back to my nice teal. I mean, I guess you could do it. Top stitching could be in a contrast color. That's not a real problem, but I guess I prefer, in this case, I want it to blend in and be as if it's not there. You just notice the impression rather than see the stitches. And changing threads is not a big deal. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and I'm going to stitch this on, because I don't like to rely on pins for the long process. And again, I'm just stitching it near the edge to hold it in place. It's a virtual baste rather than an actual baste. Oops, that's not the right button. So these are attached on, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be attaching the upper gusset to the lower, or the gusset, the side gusset, to the front and then to the back. So I am going to first find a midpoint here, and I'll just stick a pin there. And I did that by matching the base of the zipper and fold it in half. And there's a pin. And then once I've done that, I can go all the way down to the opposite end, and that's the midpoint down here. And I can either put a pin or I can put a marking. Either one works. And I'm not going to do the back yet. I'll set that out of the way. I'm going to do the pocket first, the front. So again, I'm matching the sides, and then that is my midpoint. And I'm going to put a pin right in there. so that I can have the top center and the bottom center, and then I can match. See, again, there's I match the sides, go back down and put a pin there. So I'm going to take the pins that I just put on. This is the bottom of the bag. I'm going to match the center of the bottom gusset, and I'm going to put one pin to one side, one pin to the other side, because I have two pins right there. This is the top of the center gusset. I'm going to match the pins, but then I'm going to pull one pin out without moving my pieces, and then I have two pins holding there. And then I'm going to slowly don't want to pucker there. Trying to get the puckers out. Sometimes it's moving pins around as you go. Okay, so I have it pinned all around, and I'm going to try to stitch it. Let's see. Let me just check, make sure that I haven't done anything differently than how she recommends. She suggests a clip into the seam allowance first of the gusset to ease. I like to try it first, and then if it doesn't stitch well the first time, then I'll get into that. So seam allowance, 1/2 inch. Tie off at the beginning, tie off at the end, and away I go. Come on. And this is a case where I'm going to go slowly around those corners. Slowly, very slowly. I'm pulling it out to match the edges. Definitely stopping with needle down. And this is where my tweezers would come in handy, because, okay, I do understand why she's saying it's good to clip here. So I'm going to try a little clip. That pair of scissors are good for thread only. Tweezers or a stiletto would work really well at this venture, but patience also works. So I will give her some credit. I will do a little, she says clip 3/8 in your gusset. I'm doing a little under 3/8 at the center of the corner. Like I say, I like to give it a try first without clipping. If I can be successful, then I feel better because I've left the fabric attached. But usually if it's written in the instructions, there is a reason why she suggests such a thing, because they've done it a few times and I'm only on it not so many. Whoops, that was lucky. Okay, we have been around one side once. Let's see how we did. Well, that's okay. Got some threads I got pulled through by accident, but those are pretty easy. I'll just clip them. But I think we did okay. And it went through, it's pretty thick here where you're going through a zipper, you're going through fleece and canvas, and the zipper cover, but it seemed to do okay. It just marched right on through. I do love my machine for that. So I am now going to pin the other half. I won't make you watch that, and then we'll stitch that in a minute. And here we go on the other side. Same thing, stitching 1/2 inch all the way around, except it's a little more bulky. Actually, I'm going to stitch. I like stitching on the gusset better than on the actual piece. You do want to make sure your zipper is open as you're doing this. You don't want to find out later that, oh dear, I got to figure out how to get in my bag. So as we're doing this side, we're hitting both the strap holder and the catch at the bottom, And I'm going to go back afterwards and reinforce those with additional rows of stitching. I want to get all the way around first. There's a pin there. Because we definitely want to spend the time now in the construction giving them a little bit of extra support, rather than finding out later that it would have been nice if we had done so. Sorry, I have too many animals around, so I have to make sure that I pick up pins when they fall. Okay, so now I'm going to look at my corners, make sure I don't have any puckers. And I'm just feeling that one. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, that's not bad. And over here to this one. And that one also looks okay. So now before I turn this bag, I am going to stitch along here and along here where the top hold is. I'm gonna reinforce a couple times in each place just to be sure that they're well held. And before you do this step, she does say in her book, if you want to have two lower hooks so that you can switch which way your bag hangs, that can be done at this point too. I opted not to do that. I don't think I see a need, but if you do, she does mention it and it's there. In my final assembly, I did tuck my strap into the pocket to try to keep it out of the way, so that it was not jumping back up. It's very important to make sure that that part is in and that your little D-ring is in also, because if they're hanging outside the bag, then you're going to have a problem. So let's see if we can turn this outside of our bag around now and see how it looks. And then after that, we'll do the same thing with the lining. Stitch in the front to the back. And this will need to go for a press, but I think all of our pockets, or all of our corners rather, look okay. So there's the outside of our bag. It's on its way to be pressed, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did for the outside with the inside. You take the gusset, find the center point. If you match the seams there, it's really easy. You can either make a mark, or you can put a pin. This time I'm going to make a mark. Those are matched. And one last one. So that's the gusset, and then each of these pieces gets marked match the sides, mark the center, match the sides, mark the center. Okay, and again, more pinning, more stitching. You don't have to watch it all. Okay, and then we're going to trim the seam allowances only of the lining, but we're not trimming this top edge of the gusset. We're just doing the sides and the bottom and up the other side. We're going to trim them down to 1/4 of an inch. So I think I'll start here and I'll go down here. Oh, and there's a little pucker there. So maybe I'll take that out and fix it, and then I'll trim the seam allowances. So I'll be back. We're going to take our bag and we're folding the top gusset back on both sides. And we're going to take our lining that now has trimmed edges all around. And I think I want the pocket of my lining to be towards the back. So I'm going to put it towards the back and I'm sliding it in here. And what we're doing is we're trying to line up the corners. And this is a case where if you have your binding clips, you will find them much more useful than pins, because pins are just kind of tough because there are a lot of layers here. But we're bringing the edge of the lining, the corners of the bag together across this seam allowance here. And there's another seam allowance on this side. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to match the corners of the bag, put a pin or two in, go across to this side. And see, I did reinforce, and I actually zigzag too for where the top of the holder goes, the sling bag, the strap. So we've got it pinned across. Okay, now that you've got it pinned, you're going to be wanting to stitch right on the seam that you did before. I am going to change my bobbin, and I'm going to match half my thread to each. I have the lining on top, I have the outside on the bottom, so the thread will match the outside and the bobbin. Nothing should poke through that could be seen, but this way I can be sure that it doesn't. So I have changed my bobbin thread. Let's put this up so you can see. And I am going to stitch very carefully from where the corner stops bending pretty much. So right about there. Yeah, you can see. So there's the corner, and then it's starting to straighten out, and that's where I'm going to put my foot down. And remove my pin so I don't stitch it. And I'll do a tie off. And I'm going to be stitching right along the existing stitch-in line, holding both sides together. That side is stitched, and now I'm going to come over and do this side. My instructions out of the way. Make sure you don't have any straps where they shouldn't be. Over here to where I start to turn into the corner, do another tie off. And then I have my lining is attached at the top of the bag. See, it's attached in. And it's attached over here too. So now for the tricky part, or the fun part, we're going to change to our exterior thread, but I'm going to put the inside, I will match. we're going to make sure that we line up. This is where you're going to spend some time getting organized, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we are going to top stitch on the outside, and we're going to catch the lining on the inside. So this is where, if you've got the magic tape that you can hold your zipper in place, that's a great thing to use. You can hand stitch. If you want to only hand stitch on the inside, there's a point earlier when you can do the top stitching on the outside. But I don't wish to hand stitch, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time getting everything lined up properly so that I can then top stitch around both sides and again across this part here on my zipper. And since I did that I did have a pink top stitch. I didn't realize that because of all the flowers, I guess. But I think I will do this in blue because there's a lot more that's blue. So I am going to spend a little time getting organized, and I will turn it back on and show you after I've gotten it pinned. So now is the tricky part. I'm going to try it with the free arm and see how I do. I'm trying to stitch very carefully along. I'm going to start actually a little bit in, and then I'll do the end by the zipper later. Because I'm going to edge stitch along the edge of the zipper to make it look nice and also catch what's behind. I'm doing my top stitching and hopefully my edge stitching at the same time. We'll find that out afterwards. Ouch. Another reason I like clips. They don't poke. So, and I'm looking at the inside, and I seem to have done a fairly okay job of catching it. I'm going to do this side first the same, and then I will switch to my zipper foot and do around the end of the zipper. That's going to be a little bit harder to do because of its tight quarters. Let me try this side first. Okay, and this side I also did okay catching the lining in. So now I've got to pull some pins that keep attacking me and finagle the bottom ends. And these are going to be a little bit harder, in large part because of the zipper being here. Because you've got to close the zipper part way to work around it. And maybe with the zipper foot I can do that. I prefer top stitching with my regular foot than with my zipper foot, which is why I did it that way. But I think I'll be able to do that. Get some threads to trim. And so let me switch to my zipper foot and see what I can do. Now, I don't know how many of you have FOF machines, but do remember that when you put a FOF foot on, you should be able to read the number, and the zipper foot goes like this. It's not your standard zipper foot that if you grew up with a machine that was created in nearby upstate New York, you might be familiar with. It's long, narrow. This is a perfectly fine zipper foot. It has room for the IDT. You can put it on either side, but a lot of people think, oh, the zipper goes in there, and it doesn't. This is the little sleigh edge comes up the front. So let's see here. I gotta move my needle out. That's one side. And it caught it inside nicely. That's good. Got some funky stitches to pick. And on to the other side. Let's see if it's gonna go as smoothly. This is making me think I should have done the whole thing with the zipper foot, but as I said, I prefer top stitching with my regular foot. So that's how I did it. And some threads to be trimmed, but cute bag. I'll give it another round of trimming and one more nice press. And this, what is it? The Sandhill swing. The Sandhill bag is done. And this can be closed too, so it doesn't peek out. But there we are.